Hi, this is Chris West for House Calls Vermont. Welcome to another interview. Today we're going to be speaking with Katrin Klingenberg. She's the founder or co-founder and current executive director, if I have that right, of the Passivhaus Institute US. And we're going to be speaking with Katrin about the Passivhaus movement, about Passivhaus Institute US, also known as PHIUS. And where we're at, where we've been going with super insulated buildings, how it's influenced codes in America, which I think it actually has had quite an effect on codes in some states. I'm sure we can find a couple states that are not doing that. But welcome, Katrin, to our humble little home.
I'm really, really honored that I get to be here with you, Chris, today. So I'm excited and looking forward to hearing your questions.
Great. So I'm going to start off very simply and very basically, just very broad, brushy. What is Passivhaus and why should we care?
What is Passivhaus? That is a broad question. I think just in a nutshell, for just everybody to understand, it's really a set of design principles and building science and construction technologies that really any building can benefit from. So, top of the list, of course, is as the name says, passive. Any methods or principles that help conserving energy. So, such as that, this is insulation, front and center. We also use some of the passive solar gains. That's still like a little bit of a carryover from the good old passive solar days, but in the modern passive building days, not so much solar, right? Because we have heating and cooling needs these days. So we really need to balance the two for best results. We want an envelope that is absolutely airtight. Some people get scared by that because they say like, hey, the building has to breathe. But so the good news is that only the opaque elements are supposed to be airtight. So that means that the air that we're bringing in, that comes in through intentional openings, and that's actually way healthier. So the good old days where fresh air came in through cracks, not such a good idea. Comes in through insulation and that kind of stuff. So what else? Thermal bridging, anything else in the envelope that might conduct heat more than the rest of the envelope is a bad idea. Like, for example, like steel going through the envelope is like a super raceway for super highway for heat loss. So you also want to eliminate those things. And that is it in a nutshell. If you follow those principles, you will end up with some very nice building components. Your wall will be much nicer, and the envelope will be more insulated. The windows will be more insulated. The frames of the windows will close more tightly. So all higher quality, and the end result of all those different principles is that your building is more energy efficient, of course, but maybe more importantly to just everybody, it's also more comfortable and healthier, and it will also help you to coast through power outages. That's really maybe kind of like the secret that not too many people know about, right?
Especially when we're seeing more of those around. Yeah, we talk a lot about building science principles, and both Jim Bradley and I have been trained through PHIUS. Jim's a certified Passivhaus builder through PHIUS, and as you can see through my various PHIUS things, I'm a long and die-hard member of the Kool-Aid drinkers, as it were. And I got my first training in 2011 down in New York City, from you personally, and also from a number of people at Parsons who are helping you do that at the time. And one of the things we stress when we're talking to people about building science in general, and Passivhaus is kind of like the ultimate application of building science principles, is that buildings are systems. You can't touch something in one part of the house and not have it possibly, not always, but possibly affect how something else in the house is performing. What you moved to the United States, if I remember correctly, just a little bit of history, 2005 was it?
It was in 1994.
Ah,
Full disclosure.
so you were just bumming around until the no, I'm kidding. the
Yeah, very funny. No, I was going to school in Berlin, so I was getting my undergrad there, and then came over here to do my master's.
Okay, and that was in Chicago.
That was actually in Muncie, Indiana, Ball State University of all places.
Wow.
Which at the time, I mean, it always stuns people, but at the time it was one of the only universities in the US that had started to put the focus on sustainability. So very interesting. For a couple of years there, they were the leaders. So, yep.
And in the early 2000s, when did you start thinking about setting up a Passivhaus Institute in the United States?
Well, that was preceded by building my own home. In 2002, I embarked on that process, and it was personal motivation. After political change yet again, the climate goals had been pushed out of the way again. For me, that was always a priority. Pending climate change and emissions reduction. I mean, if you believe in climate change or not, it doesn't really matter. I just figured like, well, hey, we know how to do it and how to build great buildings. It'll benefit everyone. And if we can, on top of it, make sure that the emissions are down, then we don't take any risk. Like, what if it is true, right? So I decided to build the first Passivhaus in Champaign-Urbana, and that was a great success. Eye-opening experience, because once you have a project, you can actually ask policymakers, the mayor and the city council, to come in and come by and check it out and see and feel and realize how great it is. So I had people from the first city council group saying like, well, this is a great building, and also have a question. Like, I have severe allergies, and like, since I'm in this building, my allergies are way less extreme. So what is up with this building? Why is that, right? So very cool. People can actually experience how quiet it is, how comfortable it is, and like also how good the air quality is, filtering pollutants out. So at that point we were like, wow, this is really great. This would be a great solution for affordable housing, and we started as a nonprofit housing development organization originally to bring those benefits to folks who really need it. So giving people a better chance to actually maintain their mortgage, not to default on it, whatever, put more money in their pocket, be like safer that way, right? And maybe have like some extra money left to buy a new baseball glove for the kid.
Right, right.
So that was a really great concept, and that's how we started. And we built the first few passive houses in Champaign-Urbana. And once we had 3 of them on the ground, we're like, wow, this is really cool. And at that point, people started finding us. we weren't advertising or anything. They just came to us. Like the DOE knocked on the door, said like, well, it's really cool what you guys are doing. Can we monitor and like write about your projects? Well, sure, come on in. Tell us how to install the monitoring equipment, and we'll do it. So that way we kind of got roped into the DOE process, started working with the different building science organizations and the different national labs. And eventually people were like, hey, can you put your learnings together and start doing training? We're like, yeah, I guess we could do that. And that's when the first training started in 2008 in Champaign-Urbana. And then by 2010 or 11, I forget which year you took the training.
I took the training in 2011, but I was the second group, if I remember correctly.
Yep. So and that developed really organically. We never really advertised. So obviously there was a big pent up demand, and people were really looking for those solutions. And that led to the Passivhaus Institute US.
and in the what are we talking now, since 2011, we're spot on 10 years, call it 11 or 12 since the first trainings. The Passivhaus Institute US has expanded its programs, has looked at starting with the basics that were instituted by the Passivhaus Institute in Germany, and then expanded it by saying not every climate is German, and not every climate that has similar temperatures as Germany have the same exterior conditions all year round. So we just can't build like everything is in Germany unless you live either in Germany or Holland or in that little strip of America that is like that most of the year. That was a big break with the rest of the Passivhaus community, and there's I personally think that it was a very good move to start looking at climate specific building. I remember you telling a story once about a building that was built in Louisiana. I think you called it the mold house, if I remember correctly. I may be inventing that, but in the time since you've had been running the Passivhaus Institute US, how many people have been trained as Passivhaus consultants? Do you think off the top of your head?
Well, we are well into like the 3,000 upper end of people having been trained. So the number of certified Passivhaus consultants that maintain certification, that's a little bit of a smaller number. That's about like 1,000. And then of course there are the builders. In the following years after 2008, we added the builders training, the builders exam, builders certification. And then in 2011, we also added the verifier and the radar.
Right, the
training
QA/QC.
and examination, because we learned very quickly that like you can design a absolutely bang out perfect project, but if you don't assure that it's actually being constructed the way it was specified, the building is not going to perform. So, and at the Institute, we're really adamant about getting performance data back, because as you mentioned, we keep upgrading and updating and making our framework better. So for that one, we do need to get the data back from folks who are employing the technology, so that we can then in turn upgrade our algorithms, make our modeling tool better, make our processes for certification better, the quality assurance processes, all of that, right? So we really want to be as good as we can. And right now we're right about like plus minus 7% modeled versus measured, and I think this is absolutely industry leading amongst all other modeling tools, measured results as far as I know. So,
and that just throwing the name out there in case people are wondering, you're talking about the Woofy passive software.
Yes.
And that's a static modeling software, and for people who don't know what the difference is between static and dynamic, is dynamic, you're basically looking, if you can, minute per minute through a year, taking data and applying that to the status of the building and seeing how that works. But what we found, and of course please correct me if I'm wrong, is that level of granularity is not necessary. We can still, with static modeling, get within 7% of the actual in the field performance without that level of specificity, which makes it cheaper. I mean, part of I remember I was doing a Passivhaus project for the PHI, and one of the things that the client had an issue with is that PHI was asking for these ridiculous things, for these teeny bits that were, I had to charge them money to do the modeling consulting for, and the client is like, "What, are you really kidding me? Another 3 months of this? No, come on, let's get this going." And I think it's really, it really is a huge important point to say, and I think you've pointed this out during a number of the trainings I've been out, is that optimization. We've got to find the sweet point. You can make an R300 roof, but what's that actually getting us in the end, right? So you mentioned the Department of Energy. One of the things that I want to talk to you about is the almost oversized role that Passivhaus Institute US, that PHIUS has played in engaging with the Department of Energy and in the adoption of changing in codes across states. I'm on the advisory board for the Vermont state code adoption, which is every 3 years. And I've been in that process for the last 9 years. And you cannot say the word passive house without everyone in the room knowing what we're talking about. Now, they may roll their eyes and say, "Oh my gosh, you're going way too far," but they know what it is. We have, through your leadership and through the work that you and the Passivhaus Institute people have done, and of course now I'm going to get a phone call on a phone I don't use. Give me just a second. And that was such a good point. Yes, I will answer it, and then I will hang it. Good. Let me see if I can get that lead in again. So one of the things I'm really interested in is how almost oversized an effect the Passivhaus Institute US, the PHIUS, not only the organization yourself in working with the Department of Energy, but also your various acolytes, myself included, who have been in on these discussions when we're doing state revisions of the codes. Can you tell me a little bit about how that developed and where we're at right now with the Department of Energy? I mean, we have a carve out for ASHRAE 62.2 as far as direct venting bathrooms and kitchen hoods. So tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, that was a really important decision, actually. So it started with us looking at ResNet at the time, the Residential Energy Network, in an effort to partner up with an organization that is US-based and follows the best practices that have been put forward and researched for many, many years by the Department of Energy. And that was ResNet. And we were interested in their skilled raters and verifiers. They were already at a very high level, so we figured, well, we only have to train folks a little bit, and they're going to be ready to verify and quality assure our projects. So through that MOU, we learned, like, wow, there's a lot of benefit to actually partner with them, for one, because it's a huge network, right? They are well connected, and B, partner with the Department of Energy, because if the Department of Energy looks at us and says, like, well, yeah, your processes, they are worthwhile supporting and promoting, hey, we have immediately basically like someone who says, like, yeah, those guys, we sign off on them. There's no more guessing in it, right? We have been acknowledged in that already established world of high performance building. So, and at the same time, we also partner with Building Science Corporation. So it was a strategic partnership building that led to then our work with Building Science Corporation to actually not only say, like, well, this thing that was developed over there in Germany, that is really great, and just take our word for it. We actually started to embark on, like, validating it under a grant from the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy would not just have signed off on it. We did the work.
Well, we'd hope they wouldn't, right? I mean, unfortunately, they didn't.
Exactly. And they didn't. So they said, like, well, show us. And we did. In 2015, we came out with the report published by NREL on the very first worldwide climate-specific passive building standards that were also cost-optimized. Now, that was the first step away from the framework of one-size-fits-all that we had inherited originally from the Germans, right? So that was really, really crucial. And for DOE, that was totally logical because remember Joe Stiebrick and, like, whatever the climate-specific design guides that he published, DOE, ResNet, codes, they all are climate specific. Right. So it's not even a question for them. For them, the one size fits all was weird. So essentially that harmonization that we then embarked on, that was really the key to get into the door. And we ever since have continued on that path. So in 2018, we continued to refine the standards yet again. And this time not only for, like, a medium-sized single-family building, because in the meantime we had learned that it's really important to also take massing into account, like a different building typology. Yeah. Again, the balancing between heating and cooling is very different for a big building than it is for a small building. So those effects had to be figured into those energy standards that we now feel very, very confident about. And those energy standards are not one size fits all. They're custom targets by climate, by building typology, and optimized by cost. And we can do this these days because we have supercomputing. Initially, in the early days, code officials would say, like, oh, no, don't do custom targets, way too complicated. But now that we have that supercomputing power, we were able to generate a fairly easy to use calculator for an architect who doesn't have to know all the back stuff in the back, like all the complexities. They just go onto our website, like find their climate zone, and then put in how big their building is, and then the calculator spits out the design criteria, a total of 4, and then at the end a final total energy target, and that's what you design to. And that's, as you mentioned earlier, that really helps to make the whole design more affordable, because before the energy models were really expensive. Specialized engineering firms were doing those. And hell no, for a single family home, nobody was able to afford this.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, like, we have a system that allows actually an architect to like start looking at the energy performance from the beginning, has that run in the background, can get feedback on their design. Is it still meeting my energy targets? And I'm still looking like I still have a really cool design. So I can start optimizing these. And that was really the draw for me as an architect too. I wanted to be able to do that, not have to pay someone tons of money. I wanted to integrate that into my design process without having to think about all the building science and hydrothermal and difficult calculations and all that kind of stuff. So that's really the key why it has gotten so successfully into codes, because not only do we have the right indicators now to guide design, the sweet spot that you mentioned earlier, on the path to zero, that's really our big objective here. But we also have a methodology that is super cost effective. And the architect can easily incorporate it, and bingo. So now we see multifamily projects like the one behind me here, the Finch Cambridge project in Boston, that was built for an additional cost of 1.4% additional cost. That's totally within the contingency, yeah. And that's before incentives. And we see this happening over and over and over again. So we proved our point. We proved that it works in different climates and for different building typologies. And that's why the codes are now like all paying attention, codes and policymakers.
Yeah. Incidentally, yesterday, one of my multifamily projects got through pre-certification. So the second phase, it was a complicated thing over here in Hanover, New Hampshire, and with a final chat with James Ortega, who is the the certification manager, I was able to give him the last 3 bits of information and get the pre-certification. And I've been very fortunate to be able to be involved with a number of multifamily projects here in Vermont, and the data is clear on the cost. The first one, Elm Place, that was 2% yep. more than what they were expecting to pay on any other type of building. So I think the proof is certainly in the pudding on that, and the fact that when we're talking in the code meetings, we constantly talk about optimizing, because I'm in the room with builders who are saying that I can't do that, that's too expensive. And then someone from the Passivhaus side comes up and says cost of ownership. Let's look at the lifetime cost of ownership of a building. If you are a person on a fixed income and you have a house that has a high fuel usage, but fuel costs are low, once fuel costs go up, you're going to be impacted by that. And if you have a house that's got very low energy use, not only will your energy costs before inflation of energy costs be smaller, but as they go up, because they're so small incrementally, your out-of-pocket losses for the increase in the fuel will be much smaller. That's what you were intimating when you were talking about affordable housing and having people be more economically stable living in a house that's built to the Passivhaus standard.
Exactly.
You've also spawned quite a number of local, almost Passivhaus things. I mean, I'm sure you know about Efficiency Vermont. Peter Schneider and Jeff Gephardt were in your first class. And Peter Schneider developed the high performance tier program for Efficiency Vermont, which is a proscriptive set of R values for the roof, the walls, the efficiencies on the ERV, air tightness requirements, all of that. And there's been a huge number of those built here in Vermont, and they're almost passive houses, and they are absolutely based and inspired by the PHIUS model. And so even if we start counting all the projects that have been Passivhaus certified, we're kind of missing the ball on how effective and influential PHIUS has been in the country on changing the way we build. And I have clients who call me all the time who say, Chris, I don't want to build a certified passive house, but I'd like for it to be a really good house. I'm like, I got you back. I'm not, here to make sure PHIUS gets certification dollars. It's not my job. My job is building science applied to your building and worrying about durability. And now when I talk to builders, I started, I want to say 11 years ago, hanging out with the Vermont Home Builders Association, which for the longest time was a stalwart against any kind of development of applying building science. And now we're all talking about it. And it did take 10 years. And there are still members of the association that are like, poppycock. But those are in the minority now. They really are. What's going on? I could talk to you for days. But I also only have about a 45-minute interview time for my show. So what I'd like to do is just ask you, where are we at right now? What's Passivhaus doing now? I know that we just, the Passivhaus Institute US just unveiled a new standard. We went to Passivhaus 2021. Exactly. New logo is starting to break through. And for the first time, a prescriptive path along the Passivhaus single family and duplex. So give us a little bit about what's going on now with that. You also definitely plug the conference, which is in Tarrytown this year. What's going on with Passivhaus right now?
Wow, it's a really incredibly exciting time, and we're all catching our breath at the Institute because things are accelerating so quickly right at the moment. It is really amazing. So when the pandemic hit, we were all not really certain where this would go and where it would take us, right? But turned out that it was actually a good moment to take a breather and retool everything. And things kept going, and we actually doubled staff during that period. So we're now nearing 20 employees.
Wow.
And we needed them.
Yeah.
We needed them probably before too. We were all trying to wear way too many hats. And sorry to all you guys who were trying to certify. But that year really gave us an opportunity to retool and reorganize and make ourselves as efficient as possible. So to respond to the market changes. So, and to go back to what you said previously, like really a PHIUS's mission, or like the goal of the organization is market transformation, right? It's not to rake in like certification fees or whatever, what you just mentioned. Success in Vermont, as far as I can tell, like, yes, you guys totally like took the principles, you started to live and breathe them, you put them into like your regular practices. No, seriously, what Peter did is amazing, right?
And I remember being at a number of conferences where we had 20 people from Vermont at a 150 person conference. Per capita, we were way overrepresented.
Totally. And it's like, this is so awesome, right?
Yeah.
So totally cool. And also the whole idea of like pioneering the prescriptive path. You mentioned like our new update in 2021 has for the first time now a prescriptive path only for single family and for townhouses.
Yeah.
And Peter was ahead of the times, again, the Vermonters, showing the way. For single family and smaller residences, you actually are safe to give people prescriptive targets, and you get like very much like into the same vicinity as if you do like a full energy model. So and because the single family homes, they have a little bit of an additional upfront cost associated with them. So it's a different story for single family in terms of cost than for multifamily, what we discussed earlier. And to keep the not just the certification, but the design process as affordable as possible is really important. So you need the radar. I hope that the federal tax credits are coming back. So if people build new homes, the radar now can actually certify to the PHIUS standards by applying the prescriptive path. We still recommend like an energy model, of course, and if you want to take the home to zero, you still have to do a WOFI passive model. But again, we're on the right path here to try to make the design process cheaper for single family homes. Now, so with all the updates to the standard and driving the market transformation in the country by getting PHIUS accepted into various state and municipality codes, we were able to really drive our goal forward. And in 2021, we've done another really important new thing that we've always been working towards. You can show your shirt again. The whole passive building principles. They are really, the intent here is to find the most cost-effective way to get to zero. And again, from a climate perspective, from an emissions down perspective, we really need to get to because missing the term. Anyway, we need to get as close to zero as possible in our buildings and in our built environment. And so net zero buildings are actually really where we have to go to. And PHIUS 2021 actually flipped the switch. And now we have only 2 certifications. We have the original certification, Passive Building Principles, which is called PHIUS Core. In the process of rebranding, we have learned so many lessons. We're now really setting sail to reach that overarching goal of getting to zero energy buildings. And we can do this now. They are cost effective, they are feasible, they are totally here. So we have designed those 2 certification programs, the core program. This is essentially like we did it before. And then now we have added the PHIUS Zero program. You might remember we had a PHIUS Source Zero program, but that was confusing to people, and we didn't really we didn't figure out just yet how to account for offsite renewable energy production. So people out there don't get scared. Like PHIUS Zero doesn't mean you have to be self-sufficient and produce all your energy on site, because in some cases that just doesn't work. You have a not very beneficial site, like in a city, you don't get enough solar, your roof is too small, all these things. So now you can get to a net zero balance by basically have as much PV as you like. It probably makes good sense to have some batteries and have some for resiliency, but you don't have to have massive amounts of PV. It's more affordable to buy SRECs, solar renewable energy credits elsewhere, or to have like an offsite stake in a community solar farm or something, right? Yeah. So there are multiple different ways how to zero out your emissions on site. So that was a big step forward and setting sail for the new logo and the rebranding. So what is behind that? We are coming out with a new and expanded vision, same PHIUS, same diligence, same science-based, same based in passive principles. But now, as we have realized that our buildings work really, really well, and we got the data now, they are resilient, they are super energy efficient, they can easily get to zero. So there has been a new opportunity that has emerged out of all that, and that is that the building really becomes a crucial building block for the new renewable energy grid. And that sounds maybe out there right now, but these passive buildings, they, aside from being resilient, it has to do with that, they can actually store energy and they can coast, they can shift loads, they can do things that are really beneficial to the new grid. Because imagine like everybody is now getting gung-ho about electrification, and all of a sudden all that load that was on gas before is being put on like the grid that is already strained. The grid can't handle that. So
certainly not in Texas.
No, well, and elsewhere neither.
Absolutely.
So if everybody else switches over, like this is going to be impossible mathematically. It's just like not doable. So these passive buildings are really, really kind of like almost like the secret recipe, the secret sauce to a new renewable energy grid. And we're starting to look at the synergies between the grid design and the building itself. The DOE calls that GEB GAP. They have an initiative on that one for piloting purposes right now. We came out recently with a webinar, Lisa White, that was called the PHIUS GAP. Same thing. GAP stands for Grid Interactive Energy Efficient Buildings. And that means that the building has the benefit to the grid. And now we need to find out how to account for those benefits, how to rate the building given those benefits, and to hopefully maybe quantify what the monetary benefits are for the grid too, so that we can make the construction more cost effective if we can credit the building with that benefit to the grid, right? So that's what the rebrand is about. You mentioned earlier the building is a system. The building is also a system in the wider sense if you bring the grid in. And that's what that little loopy thing symbolizes. We're still firmly planted in the P in the middle, that little negative space that looks like a key. Passive building principles are still the key. And then let's get to uncovering all the synergies between the adjacent systems and make it as efficient and as beautiful and cost effective as possible. So that's what the rebrand is.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the term that I've heard used for that is microgrid or integrated local distributed battery backup or things of that sort. I mean, I remember probably 5 or 6 years ago seeing some of the solar decathlon houses have the ability for your electric car either to be charged by the house or to charge the house depending on the need at that particular moment.
Exactly.
So very exciting times. I bought a raised ranch in 1976. I'm sure you saw my presentation at Nessie that time. Completely 100% electric. And as of next week, we're going to be putting up a solar panel array, and we will be net zero, including our electric car. Money where the mouth is. That's part of my mantra. I mean, I don't mind being a hypocrite with a small h, but being a big hypocrite big H hypocrite is something I try to avoid in life. Yeah, exactly. Well, Katrin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with me and to chat about what PHIUS has been and how it's affected our building industry and what we can look forward to in the future. And I hope at some point I can have you back on to talk about more things at some point later. But I do thank you so much for taking time out, and hope that you have a good rest of your summer here in America. I have to say, I know you learned. My wife is Dutch, and she spent her first number of years living in Boston. So she has a number of words that she says with a Boston accent because that's where she learned how to say them. And you said roof, which means to me that you learned how to say the word roof out in the Midwest.
True.
It's all good. Again, Katrin, thank you so much. And until next time, for all of my House Calls Vermont's buddies and friends and colleagues, this is Chris West. Until next week, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.